I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents. Two religions, one table. Catholic and Jewish children come together to break bread.
Hopefully, our students can teach your students about the meaning of Passover.
Arming young people for spiritual warfare.
The only stable thing in this spiritual warfare is Christ in our lives.
And using the cross to understand and address the suffering of others.
The suffering that Christ suffered relates to us in our own suffering.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really hard to believe, but just over a week from now, Easter will be here. Oh my goodness. Even sooner, next Tuesday. In fact, people around the world will be marking Passover.
To help underscore the powerful connection between those celebrations, a local organization brought together young people from two faith traditions for one special meal. As the Jewish community gears up for the Passover holiday next week, the Catholic Jewish Relations Council of Queens organized an interfaith Seder for teens at St. Andrew Avellino School in Flushing.
For many years we've been doing Seders, but I thought, we should have children involved because they're the future. And they'll bring the love and concern that we practice now, and we'll teach them about each other's background.
Students of St. Andrew Avellino School and of Temple Beth Shalom's Hebrew School attended the event, which was led by Rabbi Sharon Ballin.
It's traditional because Seder means order, and hopefully our students can teach your students about the meaning of Passover. And perhaps our students can learn a little bit about the Catholic faith and how some of the Seder items and the rituals are actually part of your faith as well. We can say that together where it says, when I point, it says all on the bottom of page 20. Pesach, a shank bone, is a reminder that God passed over the houses for ancestors in Egypt during the 10th plague.
The relationship between Christianity and Judaism with regard to the Seder is that Christian Eucharistic worship is rooted in the order of worship of a Seder and of a Sabbath service at home. In terms of the kinds of prayers, in terms of the structure, with the scripture readings, and then the prayers of praise of God, the breaking of bread, and receiving or eating the bread or communion.
Founded on the basis that there's more that unites us than separates us, the Catholic Jewish Relations Council was started 40 years ago as a not-for-profit organization promoting understanding between Catholics and Jews. The Interfaith Seder is one of the programs they hold every year.
And if we can get people talking, dialoguing, understanding each other's background, we're going to help people think about how we can love each other and bring peace.
There's a lot of anti-Semitism in the world. A lot of it was due to the rift 2,000 years ago when the Christian faith had begun. And we want to make sure that we can get back and not teach hate and not teach ignorance of other people's faiths because we're different, and I think that's why it's important for us to learn from each other.
For others, understanding relations between Jews and Catholics is a way of healing.
Well, I was born in Vienna, Austria, and Hitler marched into Austria March the 13th, 1938, and that was the end of my childhood the way I knew it. And of course, Austria is a Catholic country, so that's why I find being a member of the Catholic Jewish Relation is very important to me, because it's like a healing process after what I went through.
As Rabbi Sharon walked people through the rituals of Seder, the evening concluded with a traditional kosher meal.
It's potatoes. These things cook carrots. I don't know what they are.
Tonight it was good because it showed me what the Jewish people do, and it showed it in relation to what us Catholics do. And it was a real nice experience.
Not only a nice experience, but also a new experience for those young people in Queens. And boy, that food looked good.
I know. Don't show me that. I'm hungry. I might come right through the TV and eat it.
True.
Anyway, stay tuned. That's just a bad image, me coming through the TV. There's more Currents coming up straight ahead. When we return, Congressman Bart Stupak's schedule has become a little bit lighter. We'll have that story plus the rest of the day's headlines. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up just a bit later, an historic apology from El Salvador for the death of Archbishop Oscar Romero.
But first, let's turn to the day's headlines. A Catholic group in Illinois has canceled pro-life Democratic Congressman Bart Stupak's appearance at an upcoming event because of his yes vote on health care reform. Stupak was to deliver the keynote speech at the Illinois Catholic Prayer Breakfast next month, but now that invitation has been withdrawn. The president of the event says he and other Catholics in his state feel betrayed after Stupak voted for the health care bill. The congressman had long pledged to vote against the legislation because of concerns it would fund abortions with taxpayer money. Well, Stupak changed his vote to yes after President Obama promised to sign an executive order stating no federal dollars can be used to pay for abortions. The congressman and other lawmakers were by the president's side when that promise was fulfilled yesterday at the White House. Pro-life groups have been critical of the move, saying an executive order isn't strong enough. The president only signed it for political purposes, they say, but supporters say the order is strong because it has the full force of the law behind it. In the meantime, the Senate approved a bill of fixes to the health care reform bill today. The House had passed the measure on Sunday as a stipulation for passing the overall bill. The Senate made changes to that fixes bill, though, so it will now have to go back to the House before being signed by the president. Well, a priest who sexually abused deaf children in the Archdiocese of Milwaukee was allowed to continue to serve, even though the Vatican was warned about the behavior, and a bishop said he should be removed. The New York Times first reported that story this morning, but now the Vatican is defending its decision not to defrock the priest. We get details now from Rome Reports.
The Vatican says it was not timely nor fully informed about the extent of the sexual abuse cases which occurred between 1950 and 1974 involving deaf children in Wisconsin. According to the Vatican, none of the bishops from the diocese informed the Vatican during that time period about Father Lawrence Murphy, who was accused of molesting 200 deaf boys. It wasn't until 22 years later that the Archbishop of Milwaukee, Rembert Weekland, wrote to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, at the time which was under the charge of Cardinal Ratzinger. Archbishop Weekland reported the cases because they involved a violation of the sacrament of confession. In other words, Father Lawrence was asking for sexual favors from victims in confessionals. The Vatican says it had only learned about these cases 22 years after they occurred. Many of the victims say civil authorities and prosecutors also ignored their cases, and although some of them were investigated, others were put on the back burner. The Vatican calls this a tragic case, especially because it involved so many vulnerable deaf children at a boarding school.
Father Murphy died in 1998.
Well, forget Avatar, Alice in Wonderland, and other big screen 3D blockbusters. A Massachusetts-based Catholic network is bringing 3D to the small screen. The screen on your computer, that is. Catholic TV launched 3D programming on their website this week. The channel says they are trying to reach a younger audience. The move is attracting a lot of attention, and one Boston University religion professor says he applauds Catholic TV for taking a risk with technology. He says evangelical Christians are usually the ones ahead of the pack on that front. And finally, how old were you when you published your first book? Well, chances are you don't have an answer to that question, but some local students actually do. Along with their teacher, students from Immaculate Conception School in Jamaica, Queens are now published authors. They wrote a book called Images of America, Jamaica Estates, and recently held a book signing. Our cameras were there.
To sign anywhere, don't keep it small.
I wanted them to do a special project, and one of the things I wanted to do was about the history of their parish. But when you do the history of the parish, it's intertwined with the history of the town. So then we started working on the history of the town. We started making small brochures. We did walking tours when we had Open House New York, and that just led one thing to another. And then we had all this information from the library, pictures and photographs that we were collecting in maps. And so what do we do with it? So I approached Arcadia Publishing, and I asked them if we had so much material. I said, I think we have enough for a book. We did a book proposal, and they accepted the proposal. And after a whole summer of working, we have a book as a result of that.
It feels really great. Like it's like a big accomplishment. It's like once you go from a student to an author like that, it's like it's like magic. Like when you're just like a little kid, you're in 7th grade, and all of a sudden you're an author. So it feels really great, like exciting and shocking.
I wrote the part on the history, how it was all started, Jamaica Estates. And I love to read books, so this was actually amazing to get to feel what it was like to write a book. So I like being called an author because I love to read.
I learned a lot of stuff about Jamaica Estates I didn't know. I got more involved with my community. I understand my community more, and it just helped me to understand and know my community better.
The United States' greatest natural resource are children. Now, we have to nurture them, we have to teach them, we have to educate them, we have to put things in their mind. And one of the things I want them to learn is about preservation, is about their past and where their roots are. And if they have a love of their roots, they have a love of themselves. And knowing about where you came from is so important. Know your own backyard. Children should know about their own backyard, so when they become adults, they know about their own history.
How fabulous is that?
That's so cool. I mean, you know, can you imagine being that age and being a published author? These are some smart kids.
Yeah, and it's available on Amazon,
Yeah.
and I mean, you can actually go buy this book. What a great workshop experience for these kids, and then also to just literally become authors overnight.
It's so cool.
Good for them.
Well, stay tuned. There's more Currents coming up ahead. Just ahead, what's the word? Young people from Queens get a unique education.
It's absolutely necessary that young people have the ability to come together and really to become more active Catholics.
Welcome back. Well, it is an issue a lot of Catholic parents wrestle with. How do you keep your teenagers interested and really interested in their faith?
That's right. And here in Brooklyn, the Office of Faith Formation answered that question with another question. What's the word? And that was the title of an unusual and very lively conference and workshop held out in Douglaston last weekend.
Raise your hand if you've heard of Twitter or Facebook.
Today is the annual Diocesan Youth Day, and we will have here over 500 young people from throughout Brooklyn and Queens, from junior high through high school age. And they'll be here to really express their faith and share a great day of praise and worship.
The words that we use, the words that we write, the words that we express to other people are so important because they express who we are as persons, but they also influence other persons.
This year's theme is What's the Word? Meaning that we will talk about God's Word in our lives. And so our guest speaker, Ansel Augustine, will focus on that theme.
The Bible tells us the power of life and death are in the tongue. So I'm asking you young people, and adults here as well, all the children of God here, what are you speaking? Are you speaking life into your situation, or are you speaking death?
Really, I'm going to focus on my testimony from New Orleans. So what happened with us with Katrina. Sometimes God takes away the stuff that we have and have comfort in, you know, our material possessions or whatever, to realize that all we really need is Him. And He'll bless us even more when we rely on Him rather than the material possessions. So hopefully our young people will get that message today. It's going to be interactive, and part of it will include, they're going to have a paper ball fight where they throw paper balls at one another. And out of it, when they open the paper balls, will be messages on some of the spiritual warfare items that are thrown at us, some of the obstacles, the spiritual bombs the devil throws at us. And they'll be throwing it at one another as a symbol of sometimes we have people fighting, throwing spiritual bombs away from us, but sometimes we have people that we know throwing spiritual bombs at us. And the only stable thing in this spiritual warfare is Christ in our lives.
You guys don't do any drugs? No. What would Jesus do?
We also have a number of different workshops for all different young people based on their age, based on their interests.
We have one workshop on vocations, and we also have Catholic Relief Services here. The presenters are very interactive with the kids.
In a particular scene, you have a driver who is offering everybody else drugs.
John Paul II of happy memory, who passed away 5 years ago, said that the young people who he loved and dealt with so frequently are not only the future of the church, but they're the present of the church. And I think it's absolutely necessary. If you look at what's going on in parishes throughout the church, throughout the world really, it's absolutely necessary that young people have the ability to come together to express their faith, to learn more about it, to grow in their faith, and really to become more active Catholics. And a day like this hopefully will help to achieve that.
Jesus would never do drugs because that's very bad.
But, you know, we said it was lively. I didn't know they'd be throwing things at each other.
Right, spiritual warfare. That's
Right.
funny.
But it's a good illustration, though.
I was about to say it's a good way to sort of get a tangible feeling for what it's like to have barbs and jabs thrown at you and against you, and obviously paper balls are not going to hurt you really, but it's a good analogy, and I think it's a nice way to keep that in mind, keep it alive in people's minds,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
kids' minds.
Yeah, very, very much so, very much so. And, you know, it's nice to have lively things like that because, you know, I remember being a kid, being a teenager that, you know, unless I kind of, you know, I was a really visual person, I guess, and I was kind of a hands-on kind of person. So you give me an activity like that, and I would love, and I would really grab onto it and really hold on to the things that I learned there.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to just really get kids up off their feet instead of just, you know, sitting there feeling like they're being, you know, talked over or things. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes.
that doesn't work so well. Anytime you can get them involved, it usually sinks in a little more.
Definitely.
All right, well, there's much more currents ahead, so please stay with us. When we return, helping the suffering of the world with renewed passion.
We're offering a vision of Catholic social principles and Catholic social values.
Well, last night we told you about the life and death of San Salvador Archbishop Oscar Romero. Well, yesterday, on the 30th anniversary of his death, the country's president apologized for Romero's assassination and unveiled a mural in tribute to the Archbishop at San Salvador's airport.
Wow. Oscar Romero often expressed solidarity with his country's poor and was a strong believer in justice for all those who are suffering. Recently, that very theme was explored at a retreat for young adults at the Passionist Retreat House in Jamaica called The Impact of the Cross in the World Today.
So that's how I very clearly understood charity.
This retreat is the first of a retreat model that our office has created, the Office of Justice, Peace, Integrity of Creation. And it's specifically a retreat that looks at Catholic social values, but is specifically now adapted for passionist spirituality. So we take social issues, in this case we're looking at the issues of economic justice, and specifically global, the whole global economic reality that we're facing right now. And we're looking at it through the lens of Catholic social teaching and the recent document by Pope Benedict XVI, Charity and Truth. But furthermore, our specific focus, this being a Passionist Retreat Center, is that we're offering it from the lens of passionate spirituality. And for us, that means the wisdom of the cross, the devotion and the memory that we have to Christ crucified. We're taking that in, and we're looking at the lens of the suffering, the economic and social suffering that's happening throughout the world.
Well, I work mostly with low-income individuals in South Philadelphia, and talking about justice in this context is really refreshing because often I feel like in my work I'm very alone most of the time, only with clients, and I don't really get to put aside time to think about why I'm doing what I'm doing in a more theoretical or theological sort of way. And it's also nice to know that there's a whole body of work being done about this.
This is an age group that is less well represented in active people participating in church things. And we feel that there are people who have insight, who have values, who have perspectives and yearnings. And in large measure, I think the church is missing these people. And so we intentionally went out to recruit young adults to have them come in so that we could present from our perspective about issues of social justice and the reality of justice in our theological, spiritual understanding, and also solicit their reactions and their responses.
I guess our primary focus is to take this time to inwardly reflect and come to terms with the justice and peace and integrity of creation.
we're offering a vision of Catholic social principles and Catholic social values, but we're doing it from a framework of relationship that comes from our passion and spirituality. That relationship tells us that we're in relationship with God in our suffering through the cross. So the suffering that Christ suffered relates to us in our own suffering.
So nice they could get away and really sort of think about things and have that spiritual renewal.
Right, absolutely. Always good to recharge the batteries. And, you know, they came from all around. The young woman there who came from the south side of Philadelphia. And so they're coming, you know, from different places, and it's always nice to do that. People maybe from different areas with different experiences and different walks of life to come together for a common purpose like that, and to you know, learn more about suffering and how to deal with it from a Christian perspective.
And also not only those who you're serving in her case, but also about, as the piece said, you know, your own, and how that commonality is something that you share, as they were saying, with Jesus, and that you know, what does that have to teach us, and what does that also let us know about ourselves, that we're in good company, if you will.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, good to recharge the batteries there. Well, that's it for tonight's edition of Currents. Now, coming up tomorrow, we'll head into the deep with Bishop DiMarzio. He'll share his thoughts about the healthcare reform bill.
Meantime, remember, you can always watch us online at currentsny.net, and you can follow us on Twitter and become our fan on Facebook. Until next time, I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night.